Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Big Daddy Top Hat here, welcoming you to another exciting edition of Micro Mondays, the YouTube show, or Patreon exclusive show, should I say, where I talk about some of my favourite microcomputers and microcomputer games from the past. In today's episode, as chosen by the wonderful people of Patreon, I'm going to be talking about a game I love known as Arkanoid, published by Taito in 1986, the very year I was in fact born. Speaking of Arkanoid, you could argue that it has built on the previously established Breakout formula, kind of like what Gallagher did to the likes of Space Invaders years before. It took a familiar, known style of gameplay and basically created something new and better. In fact, there are other influences too that went into the creation of Arkanoid, outside of just Breakout. One of the biggest being the successful movie known as Tron, which is where the game gets many of its neon aesthetics from. What the game differs with in terms of gameplay compared to the likes of what came before it is that your paddle in the game is actually a little spaceship, which I believe is known as the Vase. It basically escaped from a greater mothership known as the Arkanoid, escaping a villain known as Doh, spelt D-O-H, like what Homer Simpson says. Doh! So anyway, this little spaceship known as the Vase runs away from Doh, and then you're playing with the paddle up and down the screen, just like in Breakout. However, a key difference between the two games is that you can acquire power-ups, like in games like R-Type, for example. So rather than being able to shoot one ball up and down the screen, sometimes you can shoot two, or you can shoot three, or on some occasions you can get a power-up that extends your bar, allows the balls to stick to the bar, or even allow the bar to shoot, just like in a space shooter, vertically up above. Vertical or horizontally, I sometimes get those two words muddled up when I'm not scripting stuff. But yes, it's pretty different to what came before, and it's a very impressive game. In fact, it was the third best-selling arcade game in Europe the year I was born, back in 1986, actually making it a far more popular game than the likes of Super Mario in my region. Most people would have played Arkanoid at some point if they lived in Europe. Speaking of its popularity, in fact, Arkanoid may be the very first game I can even remember playing, or at least watching. We had it on my Amstrad CPC 464, which was kept in my bedroom, and I remember watching my father play it when I was very young, far too young to really even play games myself. And watching him play through from level to level, all the stages, a great presentation, bright colours, and thinking about it, it makes a lot of sense today why so many children like to watch Let's Plays, because sometimes it's a lot more fun to watch someone play games who's a lot more capable than yourself, especially when you're that young and it's all very new to you. Although when I eventually did start playing, obviously it has very simplistic controls, so it's actually a really sensible game for a new game to start out with. Simplistic enough that you could actually imagine people who don't really play games even managing to pick up and play it on the likes of a mobile phone. At the time, during my childhood, it felt like the game was endless and the levels would just go on forever and ever. I can only recall seeing my father maybe play through 6 or 7 levels at most, because it was quite a challenging game, and the most I could get through in my youth was 2 or 3. But according to my research in the last few days, I've actually discovered that the game's actually quite big, with over 30 levels to get through, which is quite surprising really, because I assumed it would be like Donkey Kong in the arcades, for example, which only has 4 levels and you just play them on loop, which was the same for many games of the era. But nope, the game has many levels which you can play through in order, and in fact, if you get to the very end, something I've never done personally, you even get to fight Doh himself, who looks like an Easter Island head. Personally, until recently, I never actually even knew he was in the game. I just thought he was a cool feature that was on the loading screen. With regards to though, he's actually mentioned, I believe, although this is only from my own memory, and they might not even be real memories, but we'll soon find out when I overlay footage over this video. They explain the plot in a rolling or more like scrolling sequence at the beginning of the game. This scrolling sequence on the Amstrad always really impressed me as a child, because when you actually look at it, it looks quite depthy, like the stars are at different distances, which looked absolutely amazing to me in the 80s on my humble CPC 464. So yes, that's what I've got to say about it really. It's a bright, colourful, fun, simple, pick up and play game made by Taito, and taking into account what it built on and what was created, it's not really surprising that Arkanoid was a success and that I enjoyed my time with it as a small child. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this somewhat rambly video because it was completely unscripted, but I will see you all soon. Cheerio!